Thank you so much for being here. Please join me in welcoming Lisa Simmons.
Well. 28 years. Thank you so much for being here in the primary, in the World Cup, in the 250th, and the Sail Boston. We decided we were going to run a festival regardless of all those things that were going on. You know why? Because we knew that you would show up. So we thank you for that. My name is Lisa Simmons. I am the Executive and Artistic Director of the Roxbury International Film Festival. And and my sister Allison, as I always say, my sister Allison is the co-director of this festival, and she won't stand up here with me tonight. But we love her and we understand. All right, so let's talk a little bit. So tonight we gather, not simply to watch films, but to celebrate something much larger. The power of stories, the strength of community, and the enduring belief that every voice deserves to be heard. For 28 years, this festival has been rooted in that simple idea that stories matter. And they matter because they help us understand one another. They matter because they preserve our histories. They matter because they challenge assumptions, they inspire action, and they remind us of our shared humanity. Film has a unique ability to transport us into the lives of people that we may never meet and the places that we may never visit. It allows us to see the world through someone else's eyes. At its best, film expands to our understanding of who belongs, whose experiences are valued, and whose stories deserve to be told. That's why representation matters. When communities see themselves reflected on screen, not as stereotypes, not as footnotes, but as fully realized human beings, and when audiences see these stories outside of their own experiences, it builds empathy, understanding, and connection. The Roxbury International Film Festival was founded because too many stories were being overlooked. Talented filmmakers were being told that their voices were too niche, that their experiences were too different. But this festival has spent nearly 3 decades going against that actual information. So every year, filmmakers from around the world trust that their stories will never be overlooked. That they are told that every year that filmmakers from around this world trust that we will help them tell those stories. The stories of joy, the stories of struggle, the stories of resistance, the story of resilience, the stories of families, of neighborhoods, of cultures, of movements, of dreams that make all of our collective lives so much richer. That's what we do at Rox, and that's why you're here, and that's why this film is here, and that's why every 120 films that are in this festival are here, because it brings us together as community so that we can have these conversations. I want to take a quick moment just to honor 2 individuals whose vision helped us make this festival possible. Candelaria Silva, and thank you. And Elmer Freeman, both who we lost this year. Candelaria and Elmer, both of whom were champions for the work that we do. They were talking long before about conversations of diversity and equity and inclusion, and became commonplace that Candelaria and Elmer stood for something fundamental, that communities of color deserve to be seen and heard, and deserve opportunities to tell their own stories. They believe in the power of community and the power of communities to change and impact change. At RoxFilm, we continue that message, and it's a collective effort that brings us back here, year and year, to celebrate those stories. It's the filmmakers. If you're a filmmaker, can you raise your hand or stand up or do something? Woo! If you're here as a sponsor or a partner, please raise your hand. You believe in our mission. It is the volunteers, we are volunteers. It's the audience, it's you who show up every year, year after year, to support these independent artists and engage in stories that challenge, that entertain, and that they inspire. Together, all of us are building this cultural space in stories that can thrive, artists that can find support, where communities can see themselves reflected in an honest complexity and pride. I want to take a quick moment to recognize the team that makes this festival possible. Because it don't happen just with one person. It happens because of the dedicated people who give their time, creativity, and heart that they've shared, and the challenges that we all face, and managing volunteers and solving countless challenges. So, Katerina Ariel Lopez, Renee Gaillard, Joanne Gomes, Hans Krieger, Andrea Lyman, Joyce Moore, Valerie Scott, Susan Terrell, Tanya Thomas, Carol Thompson, Dorian Walker, and of course, my sister Allison. Can we please give, this is the RoxFilm. Kristen Hoskins, Catherine Irving, Jeremy Gosh, and Paige Moreau, Hibernian Hall, Hans Lefteri, Assad Hauer, and Noelle Rahman, and Mass College of Art, Temple Gill, Anthony Flackett, Dylan Solar, Mary Grant, and Just Bookish, Portia Alawa, and Paloma Valenza. And none of these venues would have had films if it wasn't for our print traffic and technical directors. Lorraine Black and Wesley Hicks, who's our projections tonight, who make all of these films just beautiful. So we're grateful to all of you, and as I said, the festival would not be the festival without you. I promise I'm almost done. This is so important to talk about. And to thank everybody. We thank our filmmakers for trusting us with your work. Film requires courage. Sharing with an audience requires even more courage. So building your creativity, your vision, and you're giving your truth to RoxFilm, we appreciate it. Over the next 9 days, you will experience films that are, as our tagline says, provocative, entertaining, and fiercely independent. You'll discover new voices, engage in bold ideas, and encounter stories that may challenge what you think and you know about the world and about one another. That's the gift of film, and that's the purpose of this festival. So we have been proof over 28 years that stories are our communities, and they are not stories of people on the margins. They are stories of real people in everyday life. So thank you all. Thank you for believing in us. Thank you for being here, and welcome to the Roxbury International Film Festival. So before we get started tonight, we have two amazing films. We have a short, the Bill Patterson story, and we have Transforming the Beautiful Game. And you will see the way that my sister and I curate. If you come to any other parts of the festival, you'll get it. It's about themes, it's about conversation, and it's about, for these two particular films, it really is about mentorship and about making sure that we are making space and room for the people that come behind us. And so I want to welcome Dan, who is the producer and director of Transforming the Beautiful Game, to say a few words about that film. And then we will have a conversation with everybody up here on the stage after this to talk about both of these films and how important they are and the impact these men have made on both of their sports. So, Dan?
How about they good up for Lisa, huh? Hi Boston, how we doing? Good night. Great to see everybody here. We're so excited, and we're honored, of course, to be sharing the stage with Anthony and his team and the Bill Patterson. Anthony, stand up, give us a big wave right there. Bill Patterson did over 30 years of public service in Oakland, mentoring kids, and sport is so important because it anchors, and we can all think about how important sport is in our lives. I know it is for me and for many people in the audience. My high school coach is here tonight. You know, we've been friends all these years. Tom Hervey starts town soccer in Milton with my 4th grade class. And he made it from there to here. And when you talk about a mentor, Tom's been a great mentor for me for decades, and I appreciate it. Tom Hurd, thank you very much. After Milton High School, I went to a small school in Maine, Bridgeton Academy. Some Bridgeton teammates and some of my Patterson teammates. I went to Bridgeton to learn how to study. It's a home for wayward jocks. And I like to tell people I got my first A at Bridgeton. My ski coach reminds me that I earned it. So, the first day of soccer practice, my teammate came up to me. He said, "Hey, you're pretty good, but your only job is to pass me the ball. My job is to score." And that teammate was from Bermuda. It was Jerry Best, Clyde's nephew. And Jerry always described Clyde as the Jackie Robinson of England. And that's something you don't forget. And I had seen Clyde play when the Rowdies came up to play the Minutemen. I had seen Clyde play with the Portland Timbers. And like Lisa said, the movie's about teammates, it's about mentors, and teammates are for life. You can all think back about a teammate that you have, a coach, a teacher, an art teacher, somebody who's inspired you. I'm also a lifelong sailor, and I've sailed in and out of Bermuda my whole life. And every time I would get to the island, you just get in the taxi and go, "I want to find Jerry Best," and the driver goes, "Come with me." And I get reconnected with my teammate. And while I was producing for the America's Cup in 2017 in Bermuda, Jerry and Clyde would come and hang out with me at the Cambridge Beaches Resort, and we would talk football, soccer. And so I called my old coach from Bridgeton Academy, because we were still friends. And he said, "Call this other alumnus on island." He gave me a phone number. Call Dennis. So I called Dennis. How did I know that Dennis would turn out to be the Speaker of the House of Parliament for Bermuda? His childhood hero and friend was Clyde Best. So he gets the Minister of Sport on the Zoom call. And that Dennis starts telling Minister Peets about Bridgeton. Minister Pete starts to laugh because he went to Bridgeton in 1988. So here we had 4 people from one small school, and the story began. And it's so rare to find a story that people don't know. Clyde Best was a 17-year-old boy on a one-way plane ticket to England, to a country he'd never been before. Not only the only black man on the team, but quite often the only black man in the stadium. A stadium that had more people in it than the population of Bermuda. Clyde played one season in 1976 for Feyenoord. We took Clyde back to Feyenoord, Holland, Rotterdam, and when he stepped out of the taxi, and he had not been back since 1976, a stranger looked up and said, "Clyde Best?" And at the end of that moment, Clyde said he had one more stop, and we went to an old folks' home. And Clyde sat for 4 hours and spoke to his old physio trainer from Feyenoord for 4 hours. That's how you build relationships. And that's what these 2 films are about. Relationships, mentorship, and community. Thank you so much for coming out to the Roxbury.
Wow, okay. I felt like I probably could have found somebody else to to moderate this discussion, but I really felt there needs to be a female energy on the stage. So I'm here with these incredible men who have done incredible things. So, we hope that you saw this sort of like theme in putting these two films together. We've got Anthony from Patterson and Dan from Transforming the Game, and of course, these incredible soccer players. Who, yes, I mean, I feel so inspired and so humbled to be among all of you. So I mean, both of the films, I think we can see that there are these connections around mentorship, legacy, responsibility, creating pathways, which is all really important about community leadership, storytelling. So we have about 25 minutes, and then I'll talk for 30, and then maybe I'll let you guys ask a question. Do we need to introduce ourselves? Okay, I think so. So Clyde, I want to start with you. So when you watch the story now, what feels most important for you, for people to understand about your journey?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that you have to persevere certain things in life. Don't give up. Make sure that if you've got a plan, stick to it. And never let a person tell you that you can. Because in life, you can do anything you want to do, and you can become anything you want to become. You just got to be amazing yourself.
I mean, at the end of the film, you hear all of these people just talk, like thanking you for all that you have done for them, and really getting choked up. And I'm just, I mean, in watching the film and seeing what you have done over the course of your lifetime and what you've had to endure, I'm just curious about your reaction to that. I know you've seen it a few times, but it's so incredibly humbling to watch that.
Well, for me, it was a journey that I took upon myself, and at an early age, as my brother told you, I knew as a 10, 11-year-old that I wanted to be a professional footballer, because I remember being a kid and going to the movies, and you always saw during the breaks teams like Tottenham Roxbury, Manchester United, and I said to myself when watching those films, hey, that's the type of job I wanted. And to be in a club like Eddie and I were at, we got spoiled, you trained. You drop your gear down, somebody came and picked it up for you, and you used to pick mine up sometimes, clean my boots for me, and that sort of stuff. So, how could I say no to that sort of stuff? It was a great profession, I love it, and if I had to do it all over again, I would.
So, Addie, you play an important role in this film too, and I'm wondering, you played this high level of football as well, and when you watch this film, what sort of resonates with you as a fellow footballer and a teammate of Clyde?
I said, the thing that resonates very much with me is just thank you to the big man. Thank you so much for leading the way. Because when I was growing up back in England, back then, as a little kid, I would have been lost. I wouldn't have known how bad racism was if it wasn't for this guy. That took a branch of it. I'm just one of those guys that glided behind him and learned from it.
I mean, it is so beautiful the way in which you just talk about your story. And I think for many of us in Boston who have lived the Boston history, thank you, in the early 70s, I think that touched a lot of us in the audience when you had to go through that. And I think that there's many of us who understood it, and you just did a piece for NBC 10 talking about how you want to find that family. Can you just talk to us a little bit about that experience, and then now wanting to reunite with them who you really truly believe saved your life?
It's an unbelievable part, you know, in my life, and in that film. It was a part that is really, you know, that basically suppressed pretty much until Dan came out and decided to make this movie. It brought everything out. And when I, you know, that beach that day, I met a family that decided, you know, color doesn't matter. That decided giving life to a person matters. I would not be here, I would not be alive today if it was not for that family. And if I could go back and just say, or even today, if I could just even find somebody or somehow meet that family, the thing I would really love to say to that family, even their kids, is to say, you have no idea who gave me life. It was your mom and dad. And I want to thank them so much for giving me life.
Tony, you, as an actor and as a storyteller, I'm curious what brought you to this piece and what made you say, I want to lend my voice to this documentary, to this important documentary.
Well, a friend of mine, a long-time comedian friend, over 30 years, told me about this project, and so I said, well, who's the name of the player? Because I consider myself a pretty avid sports fan, right? And he said Clyde Best, and I said, Clyde Best? I don't even know who that is. So he said, well, go look it up. So I looked at his story, and I could not believe what I was reading. I could not believe a 17-year-old by himself went to London during these. Now, I lived in Boston in the 60s. I know what this place was like. I already knew what he was going through, and I was sitting there trying to figure out how could a person do this, and he had no real institutional support, like Jackie Robinson, who had Branch Rickey bring him in and say, you know, this is our guy, we're bringing him in, and we're going to bring more in. He didn't have that. So I was dumbfounded as to how that could happen. And I was also a little bit angry that this story had not been told. So the first thing I did, I called my friend back. I said, who is producing this? I have to be a part of it. Because this is the great, I don't feel like exaggerating. I think this is the greatest story, sports story, and you can say any story, of determination against all odds that I've ever heard. And I challenge anyone to think of a sports story where a 17, 18-year-old did something like this. It was just amazing. So that's I'm just as passionate about this story this very minute as I was the first time I heard it. Because, and I'll tell you a quick story. In London, I ran into a BBC reporter, and I asked him, I said, can you tell me why somebody in London has not told this story? Why haven't you guys been all over this? And he just looked at me. He didn't have an answer. He really didn't. So Dan Egan, who we're going to get to next, what he has done here to bring this story to life and to bring it to the world is really an extraordinary thing. And I thank you for that, man. Really.
So Dan, what did bring you to the story? And what, I mean, I know, we all know that, like as Tony said, like, we need to bring these stories to the forefront. They need to have a visibility. We talk a lot about erasure in communities of color, and film festivals like this are really important to raising that visibility. But you know, what drew you? Did you have oh, I know what it is, but I'm not gonna tell you. But it's just it's such a beautiful story, and the way that you approach it is tender and loving and respectful. And so I'd love to know how it came to you.
Well, it's really something to be entrusted with somebody's story. You know, it's really the greatest honor of my life to be trusted to tell Clyde's story. And then, of course, I'm surrounded by a lot of talent. Some that are here tonight, movie makers. Christian, who's a South Shore boy, right here. RoxFilm, who was my first producer at Nesson back in 1996. And others that have supported. But, you know, Tony puts it into words, you know, growing up in Roxbury, he wouldn't go 4 blocks outside of his neighborhood. And quite honestly, growing up on the edge of Mattapan, I wouldn't go 4 blocks in. So the fact that him and I wrote this story today talks about where Boston is today. The transformation that I see in Boston of the thousands and thousands of kids that took a Clyde Best journey. So to discover a story like Clyde's that's never been told, the fact that I was connected to my teammate, his nephew, Jerry Best, from Bridgeton Academy in 1982. But then you have to look at the island here, and what I call the noble Bermudian character. You know, be nice to others. When you arrive in Bermuda, they say, welcome home. That idea that everybody belongs. And so Clyde represents that noble Bermudian character. And everywhere we went with Clyde Best, the relationships, the deep relationships that he has with people. And Clyde's a slow drip, you know, he doesn't tell you everything at once. Just the other day he said, so I said, Clyde, you told me that 2 years ago, I would have put it in the movie. So, you know, Clyde isn't just the first black sportsman in England to be sponsored by Puma. He's the first footballer to be sponsored by Puma. The world recognized what he was doing, and they supported it. But also coming to the story is that Clyde is a uniter. He unites people. When we took this story and premiered in Bermuda, in London in March, we had 41 news agencies on the red carpet. We had footballers from all throughout the league there as well. And everywhere we go, we feel that representation of what people, of his impact. So to me, that's what drew me in, was Clyde's personality, his humbleness, and the fact that he built relationship and faith into community.
And I feel like that's where both of these stories sort of intersect, right? So Anthony Barry, you did this great film about Bill Patterson, and I didn't know anything about his work, his life, and again, importance of bringing that story forward. So what is it that you want people to understand about his life and work, and then what you feel that he would feel, you know, he passed away in 2025, like what would he feel about sort of like today and the work that you guys all did to bring his life forward? And then I also want you to say your connection to
Clyde. Well, first let me start with saying that I met Bill Patterson when he was a young man at 92 years old. I had this special interest living in mostly affluent suburb of Oakland, of understanding why there were only 1% of the population were black families. I have a mixed race family, and they started asking questions because my kids wanted me to. And I got 3 answers. The most common answer was, I don't know. The second most common answer was, well, people like to live with people like themselves, which was a very strange answer for me to hear. And the third answer was very negative. So that led me on a path to understand why. I learned about redlining, and I learned about the Kurt Flood story, how a man wins a World Series in 1964 and decides he's going to move to a suburb with his family, and he's refused housing after he leaves his home because he's black. I drive by that house all the time, and I used to just sit by the house, and then I learned he was from Oakland, and that put me on this rabbit hole where I was trying to understand why he was from Oakland. I learned that he came from a high school where Bill Russell went, Frank Robinson, and so on. And that this cat right here, Barry, worked with Bill Patterson for 30 years, and he heard one of my talks where I was talking about the what, but not the why. And Barry said, have you ever met Bill Patterson? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, he's their mentor. I'd love for him to meet you. So if Bill were here, I think the first thing he would say is serve your community. Number one, get involved. Public service is an amazing thing. The second thing he'd say is inspire people and believe in them, and they will reach their potential. And look, I'm 59 years old. I'm a first-time filmmaker. And the reason I did this was because it was a story that needed to be told, but you can imagine. I just started rolling some film and getting testimonials, and Bill had this saying. He would say, you can do this, Tony. I asked him, Bill, should we do a documentary? I mean, he put the bug in my ear. He goes, Tony, you should do a documentary. And of course, in my mind, I really wanted to do it, but I was just thinking, I can't do this. But Bill inspired me. So he took me under his wing, and he mentored me at 59 years old to become a filmmaker. It's a really incredible story. And that's what Bill was. He served all people. And I think many times people will call him a black activist, but he's far more than that. He lifts up all people. He's lifted up so many women in the city of Oakland and around the country, and he's fought for rights, he's fought for clean water. But so that's what Bill's all about. He's about lifting all people, and whoever's in front of him will be lifted. Barry?
I met Director Patterson. I'm not a filmmaker. I'm an auditor. I work for the water utility that he was on the board of for the last 27 years of his life. I didn't know a lot about his sports background, Russell, Morgan, any of that. And as I met him over the years, we had lunch from time to time. And one of the stories that resonated with me was the Kirk Flood story. To get into a little bit of detail on that, when Kirk Flood left Oakland, the first time he left, and he was in North Carolina, and there was some end of season banquet or something like that, and it was at a country club, and he wasn't allowed to go inside unless he worked there. And he sat on the bus, and Director Patterson relayed a story to me that Kirk Flood called him in tears. We were ready to quit, because the system was kind of breaking him. This young man who just wanted to play ball, and he was able to convince him to stay and pursue his dreams in spite of, much like you, Mr. Best, in spite of the obstacles. And so before he won a World Series, before he went to the Supreme Court to challenge the reserve clause, Director Patterson was there to help him steal his back. It's ironic to me that as a champion, Kirk Flood faced the discrimination in California, much like Bill Russell did here when he was trying to purchase a home or rent a home in Reading, Massachusetts. So similar stories, separate parts of the country, and two young men were mentored by the same person, having the strength to sort of persevere. So I think the message from Director Patterson is serve your community, inspire people, and as he said in the film, we're not here just do our own thing. We're here to help one another. So I think that's the thing.
There are so many similarities, and I want to go back to Clyde and just ask you a couple of questions as we're on that. Like, you had to show up. You were in a space that was not friendly to you. And I'm just wondering, so the two of you were the few black players in the first division, but did you talk openly about the struggles that you were having, or did you just sort of carry on quietly and play the game?
Well, first thing I've done look, I mean, it's somebody else's country, it's not my country, so I've got to go in and carry myself in a decent manner. I think if I would have reacted and lost my head, it would have been different from people like him, people coming after him. But as I said, my mom always taught me, in life, if you want to be treated nice, treat people the way you want to be treated. And I live that way today, and I believe in it, you know, so I think that's what made it a lot easier for me. I mean, the club we were at, it was like a dream come true. The manager, the coaching staff, they were all good people, and they never looked at us as being black people. They looked at us as being footballers, and that's what we were interested in doing. And we followed the line, followed the pattern, and that's what we were able to achieve what we did.
Yeah, definitely the same thing. Like I said earlier, you know, I'm so thankful in the fact that, you know, he was way ahead of me and took care of this kind of things. I remember, you know, back in the days, you know, when I used to travel. I used to travel a long ways, you know, to go training at West Ham. You know, it's we don't know, you know, it's kind of like I live in Fulham, and West Ham is like about, like I say, 25 stops on the tube, you know, in England, which is a long ways. So one day, you know, I was going to training, and you know, just got off a bus, and I saw some people just beating up on a youngster, you know, because of his collar went out, you know, and I just like, what can I do? And I just simply got in there and yelled at these people and said, hey, you little brothers, you know, they looked up and saw me and went, oh, they left this guy and started coming after me. Little do they know how fast I am. So naturally decided to start chasing me and just give this guy a way to get away. And I thought, I said, come on guys, you know, I just waited a while for them to get close enough, you know, because they were for strategy. And I started running. And the gap just getting more and more. And I ran all the way to the station. And of course, you know, with training and with football, the stamina was there, the speed was there. So I kind of left them behind, got on my train, and just went. But I looked behind me as I was running at times and just saw the kid that they were trying to beat up, you know, go up and start running the other way. And I just felt good in terms of that, and feeling the fact that at least I saved somebody, you know, and doing something. And that's the kind of thing that, you know, playing at West Ham, and in those days, you know, with the club itself, they brought out the past, even though we know the players, you know, like Presley always says, you know, they treated us like family. My goodness, you know, you could look at Clyde Ross and George Ross, how to treated him, and you know, that woman is just absolutely incredible. Yes, you know, so that when you look at that kind of situation and you learn from those kind of things, you know, things can only go up here from there.
So that was the Sunday game in 1972. Did you guys know you were going to make history? Did you even think about it, or was it like, we just need to beat Tottenham?
That's what I played, you know, pretty much, you know, it was just, again, the hip drop, because around here, you know, the nerves that he started leaving, I can't believe how nervous I was, you know. To be quite honest, I couldn't turn a colour that you probably all will never recognise, you know. I was starting the game, you know, so to be out there on the field and playing as well as I did, I was just surprised myself, and thanks to him, I was calming down with players and talking, was brilliant.
Clyde.
Well, as I said, being a little bit before him, once I found out the day that he was making his debut, you know, I, you know, just took it upon myself, got him with me and told him, hey, you just come from the reserves for the first game, just treat it as another game. Nothing to get excited about, just go and do what you're capable of doing. He's always been a person that loved, gifted with a lot of ability, and I knew he could play on the big stage, so it was a treat to have him making his debut that day at Crystal Palace.
You know, it's quite a thing, right? Because they were so young. You know, Addie, when he made his debut in 1971, was 17. In Easter Sunday, Clyde was 21. Addie was probably 17, and Clyde Charles was younger than that. Carlton Cole, who you saw in the movie, he said at 17 he couldn't even properly wash himself. And if you think about that, that puts it in perspective of teenage boys and what they were able to achieve. You know, we always look at the pro game and we see the pro athlete and they do these great things, but we're not always putting in perspective of age.
I mean, that's true, with the mental fortitude of a 17-year-old to leave home, to go to a place that's unfriendly, and then to be able to compose yourself and carry yourself in a way and just really play the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite something, right? It's one thing to make the team. It's another thing to be a star player in the sport in that pressure situation. So overcoming adversity through excellence, wow. You know, and at the end of the movie, Clyde says, I set out to do big things, and I've done it.
Right, exactly.
Wouldn't we all be so happy to be able to say that about our own lives?
Exactly. So, just quickly, because I want to throw it out to the audience, we have like 7 minutes, sorry. As filmmakers, as storytellers, and this is for you too, Tony, as well, what is the responsibility that you have, that you feel like you have, to tell these stories and to bring them forward, and you know, knowing that you know this is the definitive film for maybe future generations? Where do you see that? Where do you see that responsibility in the work that you've done?
Well, you know, you look at Clyde's story, because I've made films before, and I have the story, and I have my story, that how I want to tell the story, how I want to present it. I don't really care about the audience that much, because I want the story to be told. I want the audience to look at it and they can react any way they want to with it. In this particular story, I think Dan hit all the marks of what needed to be told about the story. And he let Clyde tell his own story. I don't judge people about decisions they made 20, 30, 40 years ago. One of the things I look at is what a person does later in life. Are they a person who still works with other people, helps people, or are they more concerned about how many cars they have, or how big their house is? Then I can make a judgment about that. But I have a responsibility to tell the story as it happened, and how Clyde felt it, how Addie felt it, what they think about it, and I put my point of view in it. But the responsibility is to tell the truth. And growing up in Boston in the 60s and the 70s, early 70s, I knew exactly what was going on with this story. I know what everybody in Boston who's old enough to remember, I know what you remember. And Boston has changed. Dan Egan scared the hell out of me when I came back to Boston last year. He took me to South Boston. to shot on Carson Beach. And then he took me into an Irish restaurant. And on top of that, I was wearing a Yankees hat.
It has nothing to do with race, it has everything to do with don't do that.
I didn't wear it when I came this time. I learned my lesson. But I sat there and I was looking around, and I looked outside and I saw the kids roller skating and playing street hockey, and I saw different colors of people, and I saw them talking to each other, and you know, and I said, man, look what's happened here, you know, and I think that's the great thing about life, right? That things change, and being able to tell this story where Dan took it from to where we are now, and we can look at Clyde and look at his life and Addie. It's just a wonderful thing, filmmaking, and with the story about Mr. Patterson, same thing. You have these people in life that do these incredible things, and sometimes you never know about them. And just a little short, I say little not to demean it, but just the short that he did it just points that out of all these wonderful people in our lives and all the stories that we can tell. So we have an incredible responsibility to follow that, and I know your film festival, from what I've seen, really does a good job. So kudos to you.
To you. I think there's a balance between making sure the story is honest, putting in your artistic interpretation, and making it interesting for people. Now, this is a true story. You know, when I first found out about the story, I would go home and tell my wife, I can't believe no one's told this story. I just can't believe it, and I'm going to do this because I want to preserve the story, and it's interesting. Of course, I wasn't sure how interesting. But what I learned was 30 years ago, ESPN did interview Bill Patterson. They showed up at his house with all the trucks outside. They interviewed him for 2 days, and it never launched. Why? Because ESPN was trying to turn the story into something different, where Bill was the puppeteer, and he was telling Kurt Flood what to do, and he was telling Bill Russell what to do. And I heard this story over and over again. 2 days ago, I got a call from Bill Patterson's son. He found the videos. I haven't seen them yet. 2 days of video, so when I go back, I'll be looking at them, and hopefully they'll be interested. But I think keeping that story honest, that's what we did, and that's why, you know, it was very important for me to have Barry in the writing process, because I've only known Bill for 2 years. For me, it can immediately become an incredible sports story. But Barry was always there to ground me, that story about lifting up people.
Everyday children whose lives he made better, and it was his purpose in life to lift up people. And I think every community probably has people like that we don't talk about enough, we don't amplify. I'm so glad this story got amplified, because if nobody tells it, then no one's going to know it. So I think in whatever community we're in, any filmmaker who can honestly amplify stories like that, we're better off hearing them. So I just hope there's more of it.
Well, for me, it was all about telling it from the Black perspective. That I could not inject myself into the story. And to do that as a filmmaker, that I had to learn that. And so this project, the Belmont project, this project stretched me like no other project. And to allow the story to be told without judging. And I think that's the beauty of Clyde, that's the story. Is the power of Clyde is that it's a nice guy at the beginning, middle, and end. And that's a rare story.
But the great thing is that on Saturday at the Dudley Shaw Branch Library, you're going to have an opportunity to be part of a fireside chat with both Clyde and I, who are going to be there at 2 o'clock to just answer your questions, meet them. So we're really excited that we have that opportunity for that to happen. So please tell people it's a free event. It's right in Dudley Square. Nubian Square, sorry, and we hope that you'll come. We do have to move out of the theater very quickly because we are over time, but I want to thank, I'm sorry we didn't get to questions, but I hope you enjoyed the Q&A. I hope